evening, everyone. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. Tonight we're first going to hear about Measure M. We have two gentlemen to tell us about Measure M. Douglas Breeze is representing the yes on Measure M side, and Mike Jacob is representing the no on Measure M side. My name's David Marin. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. Here's how the process works. We're going to give each of these gentlemen a chance to make an opening statement. But after that, we want to have the questions taken from you. So there are greeters walking around. They have index cards. Just raise your hand. We'll bring you a card, and you can fill it out. You can do it as many times as you like. I'll do my best to get as many in the 45 minutes that we have allowed for tonight. I do need to ask everybody a favor. If you do have a cell phone, please put it on vibrate or silent right now. It's always good if the moderator doesn't say it. The other request is, league guidelines are we don't really have applause or booing or hissing or anything like that. So we'll have a chance to give them a nice round later on, but for right now I'll ask you to please hold your applause. With that, let's get started. One other note, by the way, is this is being live streamed on kadytv.com, but it'll also be recorded and on their website for your archive purposes, because I know it's going to be exciting. You're going to watch it over and over. No question. So we drew numbers earlier. Douglas Breeze is going to start with the yes on Measure M side. Doug, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Port Hueneme Council Chambers. I don't know if we can get somebody, John, to crank up the air conditioning, but I don't feel it working. My name is Doug Breeze. I'm currently on the City Council for the City of Port Hueneme. Before I was elected to the council, I served as the Public Works Director for the City of Port Hueneme for many years, and I retired and then got on council. I don't have any further political aspirations. The reason I'm on the council is because my wife Donna and I have been together for 30 years. We raised our four children here. This is our home, and I'm on the council to serve the people of Port Hueneme. The City of Port Hueneme, I have to apologize to you for past council. Dropped the ball. They let their business license ordinance go for almost 40 years without ever updating it. So it has things in it such as coin-operated televisions, like they used to have in the motels and stuff. That's how old the ordinance is. We decided this year to update the ordinance, and because additionally, many of the kinds of businesses in the city are not mentioned in the ordinance. So therefore, they're not required to get a business license. You have to be in the ordinance. You have to be mentioned in the ordinance to be required to get a business license. So we wanted to update the ordinance, which we did. We canvassed the other cities in Ventura County, canvassed some cities up and down the coast of California, and put together a business license ordinance that's pretty much the same as everybody else. Almost pretty much all other cities in California, if you're doing business in the city, you have to buy a business license. That's the way it is. So we put Measure M on the ballot because of Proposition 218. That's a California law that requires a city, if they're going to impose taxes, which we would be doing on the businesses that are currently required to have a license, you have to put it on the ballot and let the voters vote. The city just can't go impose taxes on its own. It has to be approved by the voters. And we're required to put the maximum amount of tax.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Mike Jacob, representing the no on M side.
Thank you, David, and thank you, David and the League of Women Voters and the community for welcoming me here. My name is Mike Jacob. I'm with PMSA, and we're a member of the coalition that is opposed to Measure M. We're the campaign coalition guarding our base and protecting our port. And the opponents of Measure M include not just myself and other folks from the maritime industry, including folks here at the Port of Hueneme, but also the Ventura County Democratic Party, Ventura County Republican Party, Ventura County Taxpayers Association, the Tri-County Central Labor Council. And all of us are looking at Measure M as the wrong way to proceed with whatever update the city has in mind. In fact, we believe that the city's attempt at updating its code, however well-intentioned, is really misguided with respect to the premise for it and what it does. The ballot question that you're looking at here doesn't really state all the things that Measure M does. It's not just a simple update, and it's a major tax increase that we believe is unfair and justified, and probably not even legal once it's imposed. The claim that has been made, and I appreciate the fact that Councilman Reeves didn't make it again here, is that this is really intended to make big corporations pay. And that we just think that that's wrong. You end up punishing the base, the military families that rely on the base, the veterans that rely on the base through their contracting, and you hurt the port. And the coalition that we have, including folks as diverse as firefighters and teachers, know that that's the case, because when you hurt those businesses, even if it is entirely unintentional, it really does drive up the cost of doing business here, and that will drive away tax revenues. So the businesses that are here are paying $28 million in combined taxes to the county and city and to the state. And that's important, and we think it's a good investment by the city to sit down and talk to the folks that are the tenants at the port, and talk to the folks that are the tenants at the base before they move forward with putting a measure like this on the ballot. That didn't happen here, and unfortunately, the truth is it's aimed at businesses that will cost, that create over 10,000 jobs. So you could end up costing yourselves a good deal more than you intend. We all think that the Navy and the port are worth protecting because they are the lifeblood of this community, the lifeblood of this county. And moving forward, I hope to be able to have a little bit more time, both with Councilmember Breeze and myself, to discuss some of the issues regarding legal aspects of this and the economic aspects.
Thank you very much. And Mike, we're going to begin with you. I'm going to read the question exactly as is, but then make a slight alteration. So Mike, we'll start, and both of you will have all the questions. Nobody has heard a peep from any of the military contractors doing business at NVBC. The Navy has taken no position on Measure M, leaving it up to the Port Hueneme voters. How do you justify speaking for the Navy? Now, I know that you do not actually speak for the Navy,
Right.
So I'm just going to ask you, will you please comment on why these contractors haven't taken a position?
Sure, that's a great question, because they have. But more importantly, I think it's worth clarifying that the Navy can't take a position, and so they have not. They specifically said they have not taken a position. That's not a position on the merits. That's not a neutral position, implying that they're okay with it. That is just no position, because they can't take one. But in a letter to the city on September 30th of this year from the Disabled Veteran Business Alliance, might I quote, "When Navy officials cannot take positions on local political issues like Measure M, the voices of other representatives of naval-based Ventura County, such as Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise contractors, need to be heard. Voters need to know that Measure M will harm the naval base, decrease the surrounding Port Hueneme business patronage, decrease the amount of indirect infrastructure jobs, and help erode the Disabled Veterans Business Enterprise programs in Ventura County federal contractors supporting NVBC. California DVBE Alliance Ventura County Chapter strongly urges a no vote on Measure M. It punishes small businesses and, more importantly, disabled veterans. Sincerely, Kevin O'Connor, Chairman, Disabled Veteran Business Alliance, Greater Ventura Network." And I think the issue is, and this is in the ballot statements that you all received, the argument against Measure M. The first one is signed by 3 former base commanders. They know it'll hurt military families. It'll hurt the base moving forward. And the lifeblood of the base is its contractors.
Have to stop you there. So Doug, same question to you. Nobody has heard a peep from any of the military contractors doing business at NBVC, and the Navy has taken no position. How would you like to comment on that?
Well, my friend here, Mr. Jacob, is an attorney from San Francisco. And he's with a group of folks that have put together about $50,000 in a war chest to oppose Measure M. He claims that the city has not talked to anybody and they need to talk. We've been talking with the Navy base for over 2.5 years about this, trying to make sure that Measure M would go smoothly and that there's no issues with it. As a matter of fact, the Navy's lawyer says there's no problem with Measure M. We did try to talk with some of the businesses at the port, and they said, we don't want to talk to you, we're going to defeat you. So we've got a $50,000 war chest. Was that a stop? I didn't see it.
Exactly. 30 seconds remaining.
A $50,000 war chest with money coming in from San Francisco and Seattle and Florida to try and convince the voters of the city of Port Hueneme to not upgrade their business license when half the businesses on the port, who these folks don't have one. Why would that be? Why would they want to do that? I guess they like their free ride. It's a pretty good scam, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. And we're going to start with you, Doug, on the next question. It appears the city decided to put this on the ballot just a few months ago without an audit of actual potential revenue or providing the community with information about likely impacts on the port or the Navy or other businesses. Why the rush? Why not wait until this information could be provided? 1.5 minutes.
Well, I was explaining earlier about the process for Measure M. It falls under what's called Proposition 218 that the voters passed in 1996 that requires a municipality to take any tax measures before the voters. The city council does not have the authority to just impose taxes. It must go before the voters. So Measure M was put on the ballot for the voters to look at. It also requires that the city identify what the maximum tax rates would be. In other words, the voters would say, okay, well, we're going to approve this because the taxes that could be imposed won't go above this certain amount. The city council has all the authority in the world to impose the fees below that maximum. So that's what Measure M is. It's in compliance with proposition, with the proposition protecting the citizens. And when Measure M passes, there's a process that the city will go through to implement whatever the tax rates will be. All these wild numbers you're hearing are based on the maximum tax rates. And that's nobody knows what the tax rates are going to be.
Thank you. Mike, although you can't specifically answer the question, let's hear your comments about, it appears the city decided to put this on the ballot just a few months ago. Why the rush? Why not wait until the information could be provided?
I agree, and I think the council member said it correctly. Nobody knows what the tax rates are going to be if you followed his logic to the ultimate conclusion, but that's not even what the measure says. The measure says that unless the city council exercises discretion to implement a lower rate, the maximum rate shall apply. And that's what we expect the city to tax us at. There is absolutely no question that the fiscal impact is unknown. And the staff report itself, when they adopted the measure, said that they had not conducted an audit. They didn't know what it was going to raise, even with stated tax rates. So I think that the city is misleading you into thinking that they have not set what the rates are. They do. They have to do, and the councilman is exactly right. Under Prop 218, they have to come to you and say, what should the tax rates be? That's part of the progeny of Prop 13, Prop 218, Prop 26. It's all the same. The city cannot increase taxes without going to you, the voters. And when they do that, they need to ask for what they want. Now, could you grant them the authority to also exercise some discretion? Sure. But to date, they've exercised their discretion, and they're putting a tax measure in front of you. They don't even know what it's going to raise. They don't know what it's going to cost your community. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
Okay, thank you. And Mike, we're going to begin the next question with you. I'm sorry, Deb. Mike. Okay, only two of you. Good, I won't get any further confused. So, Mike, why is most of the opposition to Measure M coming from outside of Port Hueneme?
I think that's an excellent question. I think this community is very proud of its maritime heritage and the relationships it has throughout the world with international business. And it's made this port very successful despite the fact that it's not a large port, but it is a very successful port. And it has garnered the attention and the praise and good working partnerships with people around the world. I think everyone in this community should be proud of that. And you're working in international business. And on top of that, the attention that you've garnered with Measure M is certainly something that's raised some alarm bells throughout this country and this state. And so I don't think it's weird at all to ask people who feel that they're under attack, that they won't be able to do their business here, or frankly companies that might leave, to get engaged. And a lot of the supporters who are here tonight are business owners, they're local, and most of our contributions, frankly, are represented by people who have jobs in this community. Our campaign committee has folks from the community, and I think I'm the only person on the campaign committee right now from San Francisco. So, you know, it's fine for me to be here, and I'm pleased to be here, but I'm really proud of the local folks who are those things.
Thank you. Doug, same question to you. Why is most of the opposition to Measure M coming from outside Port Hueneme?
Well, the money that's pouring into my friend's war chest, they don't even have a bank account here. The bank that they're putting that money in to fight Measure M is in San Francisco, or Sacramento, excuse me. The big money's coming from out of state to oppose this. Look, the main reason that the city of Port Hueneme put Measure M on the ballot is because we had businesses complaining to the city, how come I have to have a business license and he doesn't? This wild accusations that the city is going to tax people out of the city is absolutely beyond the pale. I can't even imagine anybody would say such a thing. The city of Port Hueneme has a revenue sharing agreement with the Oxnard Harbor District. If we ran businesses out of the city, we'd be cutting our own throats. All this stuff you're hearing negative about Measure M is a bunch of malarkey. We want to upgrade our business license ordinance, and we want to work with the businesses in the city of Port Hueneme and charge a fair and equitable rate for a business license. These folks that are opposing Measure M don't want to have to buy a business license. They want to continue a free ride on the backs of the citizens and the businesses of the city of Port Hueneme. They're outside folks. The citizens of Port Hueneme are not only my friends, I consider them part of my family. I would not do anything to harm the citizens of Port Hueneme. And the businesses at the port need to buy a business license. It's only
I
fair.
have to stop you there. But Doug, I'll let you start with the next question. So, if Measure M passes, how do residents know the money will be spent as promised? What restrictions are in the measure?
The funding for business licenses goes into the general fund. The general fund pays for police services, pothole repairs, parks, maintenance down at the beach. It can't be spent for anything other than city services. And that's the crux. They're not true.
Thank you. And Mike, same question to you. If the measure passes, how do residents know the money will be spent as promised? What restrictions are in the measure? I realize you're not
That's
really
fine.
arguing that
And
point.
there aren't any restrictions, but let me get to, I think, Councilmember Breeze's last point, because we agree, the bottom line is businesses should pay what they owe. And businesses at the port do pay their taxes. And, you know, the millions that are being paid to the city and county, the $38 million in sales, local sales generate more. We have $28 million in direct taxes, go to the county and city and schools. That's why firefighters and school teachers are opposed to Measure M. And if these increases go through, will some businesses leave? Yeah. And that'll ultimately hurt the city, it'll hurt the county. But Councilmember Breeze is exactly right. Businesses should pay what they owe. And we're here to say that they do. And the argument that somehow under the current tax ordinance that people aren't required to pay just because they aren't enumerated and listed is just fallacy. It's section 5032 of existing law. Each person engaged in a business which is not taxed pursuant to section 5031, that's the listing, shall pay a business license tax based upon their gross receipts. That's what port tenants already do. There is absolutely no question that anyone is trying to get out of taxes. What we're trying to do is avoid an inequitable situation that hurts the port, it hurts business, it hurts the community. And I don't think there's any question that we don't pay. I think if you look at the facts are $28 million.
Thank you. Mike, we'll start with you on the next question. Why are no on M signs on the naval base? Is it true that they are being investigated for violation of the law that prohibits government from campaigning? Can you speak to that, please?
Well, I don't know anything about that, but I'm happy to say that we agree that the federal government can't campaign. So if you do see a no on M sign, it wasn't put there by the Navy. But that goes back, I think, to the earlier question which was asked, which was, does the Navy have a position? And certainly it does not. So when we get to the question of the base, you really do have to ask, who are the people who are allowed to speak on behalf of potential impacts to the base? And we think the last three base commanders who signed the rebuttal argument to the opposition in your voter guide that are opposed to Measure M are a good representative. We think the Disabled Veteran Business Alliance is a good representative of the interests of the Navy base. This will hurt military families. It'll hurt veterans. And it will hurt the community because contractors will be suffering. You know, most of the folks, I think, this being a Navy town, understand that the people who are actually doing the work are the contractors off base. And a lot of them are small businesses. And a lot of them are disabled veteran businesses. So, you know, we'd like you to take a step back and take a look at the potential risk and downside. There's nothing wrong with doing an update of your tax code, but this is not just a simple update. It goes much beyond that.
Okay. Thank you. Doug, are you able to address this question about no on M signs on the naval base if they're being investigated?
I haven't seen any no on M signs on the naval base, but I have seen no on M signs on the Oxnard Harbor District property, which is in violation of the law. But let me address some of the comments that were made here. Businesses at the port already pay these taxes, and so they're already paying their fair share. That's like saying, gee, I pay sales tax, and when I buy gas, I have to pay gas tax, and so I don't think I should have to pay income tax.
We agree.
Yeah, me too. But that's the logic that's being expressed to you here. Doesn't make any sense. Listen, Del Monte Fresh Produce, no business license. BMW of North America, no business license. Pacific Vehicle Processors, no business license. American Suzuki, no business license. Land Rover, no business license. Jaguar, no business license. Mitsubishi, no business license. Well, do you think these folks could afford a business license? And the business licenses, this is what's so absurd about this. the companies on the port that currently have a business license, they're paying about the same thing as the local cleaners or the dog groomer or the local small coffee shop.
I'm going to have to stop you there. I have a question. This is unusual, but I'm going to ask the mayor. Can we get a little air conditioning? Okay. Thank you. All right. So, Doug, we're going to start with you on the next question.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Doug, and this sort of follows on what you mentioned. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but did you know that the port's attorneys have no Port Hueneme business license? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I found that out today. One of them has been the port's attorney for decades. We found out today that we were looking things up. We found out he has no business license to do business in the city of Port Hueneme. And the other attorney group that they have is they don't have a business license either. They're from Los Angeles, but they're look. I called a friend of mine tonight. He owns a carpet cleaning and window washing business. He lives in Port Hueneme. He's got a county business license. He's got a Port Hueneme business license. He's got an Oxnard business license. He's got a Ventura business license. Wherever he goes to do business, he has to have a business license. And we've got companies right here in the city of Port Hueneme, big companies, multi-million-dollar international corporations, and they're throwing $50,000 into a pot to oppose having to have a business license. I don't get it. My job is to watch out for the best interest of the citizens and the businesses of Port Hueneme. These folks need to pay their fair share and come buy a business license, and it's really no big deal. I don't understand how this got all blown up, the Oxnard Harbor District spreading information that's not true. It's beyond me how this got to this point. Frankly, I would like to work closely with the businesses at the port and have them help us come up with an equitable business license fee for some of them. That's another thing Measure M does. It treats every business category the same. I don't care if you're on the port or on the Navy base or in the city. Everybody pays the same.
I disagree.
Please.
Come on.
Oh, no, that's okay.
No, it's not okay. Lead guidelines, everybody agree, there'll be no outbursts. Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
That's okay. Every business category will pay the same amount. If you're a dry cleaner, all dry cleaners pay the same amount, that sort of thing. Okay. And the city is not interested in running any businesses out. Nobody's going to lose their job. This is not some kind of, all this stuff you're hearing. It's a simple ordinance update for a 40-year-old.
Thank you, Doug. I'll have to stop you there. Mike, though, we want to give you a chance to address the question. It was, did you know that the port's attorneys have no Port Hueneme business license? And what are your thoughts?
Sure. I think if the council member's last statement was true, we wouldn't be here. If all the businesses of the port were being asked to do was to pay the same rate as everyone else, then you would have existing law. That's what the current ordinance says. There's a schedule. It's in 5031. In fact, we put this up on our website.
And I do want to try and get you guys to address the questions.
Well, I can't address any one individual taxpayers, but I can say if they're out of compliance with the ordinance, they should pay. If they have a reason why they're exempt, then they have a reason why they're exempt. I don't know what that is, but your city should enforce that. They should enforce their tax ordinance. If, as the council member said, there's a lot of companies that aren't paying, go have conversations with those companies, but we don't think they're not paying because we know what the aggregate numbers are. But on top of that, we also know what the existing city ordinance says. It says, if you're not listed, you shall pay according to the fixed, I'm sorry, not the fixed fees in 5031 and 5032. You should pay according to the schedule. We want to continue to pay taxes according to that schedule because that's how business works. We have a group of folks who make investments in the community. They know that they're going to pay fair share. They know they're going to pay the rates that were advertised. And if they change, they only change after a concerted discussion with the community, with those businesses and with the people that are affected by it. That's not what's happening here.
Thank you. Mike, we're going to start with you on this next question, and I'm combining two. But the question is Measure M legal, and can the city tax interstate commerce?
That's a great question, actually. We wrote a letter to the city about that just a little while ago. And frankly, the answer is no. So the taxes that are being imposed here are at differential rates than the rest of the businesses in the city. And when you do that, you're discriminating against interstate and international commerce. So, without going through it in a lot of detail, I think it's suffice to say, and everyone in this room would more than readily agree that when you look at the port, should it pay its fair share? Yes. Should it pay more to this city? Thank you. We agree. But should those businesses pay more just because they're doing business at the port? And the answer to that legally is no. And until 1978, that was actually per se violative of the Commerce Clause for stevedoring and for things like vehicle processing cargo. The only way you can do it now legally is if you do it in a non-discriminatory way. These taxes are facially discriminatory because the rates are different. So that gets to, I think, where Councilmember Breeze and I agree. If these rates were the same, this would not be happening. But they're facially different. They have very, very dramatic increases imposed.
Thank you. So Doug, you may not need to take the whole minute and a half on that. We'll keep moving along if we can. But the question is Measure M legal, and can the city tax interstate commerce? I think I know how we'll answer.
It's my understanding, I'm not an attorney like my friend up here. It's my understanding the city cannot tax interstate commerce. However, we have looked into, for example, taxing stevedores. What does the law say? What are the court renderings? It's been to court a few times. City of Port Hueneme firmly believes that our proposed ordinance is in compliance with the law. We looked at, I think it's, is it Virginia? Where's the other city that has the, pardon me? Norfolk, Virginia, yeah. They have the same situation the city of Port Hueneme has. We looked at what they're doing, and we firmly believe our proposed ordinance is within the confines of the law. We wouldn't impose it if it wasn't. And I want to mention one more thing. The city of Port Hueneme loves its Navy base, and it appreciates the Oxnard Harbor District. We know how many jobs they create. By the way, none of the Oxnard Harbor District commissioners live in Port Hueneme, none of them. And the vast majority of the jobs at the port are not held by citizens of Port Hueneme.
Thank you. Doug, we're going to start with you on the next question.
Right.
If the rules about and the laws for Measure M, if it's already on the books that taxing the Navy is allowed, and according to this, there was the trip by John and Ellis to San Diego, and the Navy responded that they had no objections to providing the data. If all of that's true, why didn't the city just wait for the data before moving forward with the proposition?
I don't understand. Wait for what data?
I believe the questioner is asking that the Navy was going to provide the data to you
okay.
based on the San Diego trip. Maybe you could explain that a little bit.
As I mentioned before, we attempted to talk to the businesses at the port. A couple of them just flat refused to discuss it with us. But we had been talking with the Navy base for quite a while about capturing business licenses from the businesses that are doing business at the base. Listen, as I was saying earlier, the city of Port Hueneme loves its Navy base and loves its sailors and will never do anything to harm them. As a matter of fact, every commanding officer on that base for as far back as I can remember just espouses over and over again how much they appreciate the support that the city of Port Hueneme gives them, because it's true. I've just served as president of the Friends of the Bard Mansion, updating the history of the Bard family. We are intricately involved with the Navy base. I attend functions with all the officers, all the whole council does. Measure M has no, contrary to what my friend up here is claiming, has no impact on the commissary or the PX or anything like that. It just requires the businesses that are doing business in the city of Port Hueneme to have to get a business license. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, same question to you, but basically the question is, why didn't the city just wait for the data? Why did they move forward?
I think that's an excellent question too. You know, if you go to the city's website and you print out their FAQ, who needs to apply for a business license? It already says, all persons or companies based from or conducting business within the city of Port Hueneme and the naval base in Ventura County must obtain a city business license. Measure M doesn't change that. That's existing law. So what are they changing? They're changing the rate that's imposed. And it's going from 60 cents per $1,000 of gross receipts to $10 per $1,000. For most of these contractors, that's over 900%. And
True.
that's
You don't know what the rates. You don't know what the rates are.
Doug, you'll have a chance. Please continue, Mike. We'll give you another 10 seconds.
It's okay. It's okay. I think what this is exposing is the reason why this is such a flawed measure. They didn't have this discussion with anyone before it went on the ballot. They just didn't have it. Was this debate held here before it went on Measure M? No. Did they bring in our businesses? No. Did they have that discussion? No. So I think the question that's before the voters is, would you rather resolve these things in court afterwards? Or now, by telling the city council, please go back and have these discussions. If your intention is to do what the council member said, which is just to do an update, why is there all this controversy? None of this should be here for a simple update. You shouldn't be changing rates. You shouldn't be having major impacts. So you have everyone from the Central Labor Council to the Taxpayers Association and everyone in between saying this is bad for our community.
Thank you. And as I explained to both of you ahead of time, there was the opportunity for rebuttals. So Doug, you can have 30 seconds.
You know, where do I start? Here's my friend throwing numbers out there again that just aren't true. He doesn't know what the numbers are because the rates haven't been set yet. Yes, the ordinance says this is what the maximum is. That's because we're required to do that by Prop 218. When Measure M passes, the city of Port Hueneme will do an analysis of the business rates and the business categories, accept testimony from the businesses, and as I mentioned earlier, I personally am going to reach out to all the businesses at the port and make sure that they have input on what the rates are.
Thank you. And Mike, we're going to start with you on the next question. If Measure M passes, the port operator or the Port Operations Trade Association is prepared to file a legal suit challenging the constitutionality of the measure. So that may mean this will be tied up for years to implement. Please tell us your views about that.
I think litigation is very likely if this passes. I wouldn't speculate as to necessarily how it happens or what capacity or who the plaintiff is, but look, you're asking people who have one tax rate to pay another tax rate that is unfair and not legal. And so the existing ordinance already has an exemption built into it, even if you never pass this, that says if you're otherwise exempt if it isn't legal or it isn't constitutional. And so if you have any tax dispute at all with the taxpayer, that's what's going to happen. They're going to assert an exemption. So whether or not it's an individual taxpayer or a trade association, you're asking for this to be put into legal limbo. So I agree. It's going to be long, drawn out, costly, difficult, bad for everyone. That's bad for the city. It's bad for taxpayers. It's bad for the port. It's bad for naval contractors. There's no one that wins in that situation. And it would be much better if voters said, no, please work to resolve these issues. Obviously, we have a really big disagreement about what the current state of the existing law is, much less what would happen under Measure M. And, you know, council members are right. We don't know exactly what will happen or what exactly the tax rates will do to individual companies, but we do know that individual companies have told us this will hurt their business.
Thank you. Doug, let's hear your,
That's exactly why that's in the law, so that people can't tie up the system with lawsuits and prevent the rates from being implemented. So if someone wants to file a lawsuit, believe me, as I said before, we've copied the ordinances from other cities. It's our ordinance is trial and tested. As soon as the rates are set, 10 days, and the city passes it, 10 days later they go into effect. People can file all the lawsuits they want to, and it's not going to affect their requirement to pay. And that in itself expresses my sentiment when I told you they won't talk to us. If you do this, we're going to sue you. If you do that, we're going to put a $50,000 war chest and oppose you. What? Just so you don't have to buy a business license like everybody else? I don't get it.
thank you. And Mike, you can have a 30-second
Yes,
rebuttal.
thank you. Let me just say, there is no other business ordinance quite like this elsewhere in the state. So the framework and the structure of your current ordinance is fine. It's what's being proposed in Measure M, which is offensive, and it is legally offensive. And, you know, I think the fact that council member says, and sincerely means he's frustrated, he doesn't understand why people would put money into a campaign to stop sign just to pay a couple of $1,000s. He is exactly right. He's exactly right. No one in their right mind would do that. The reason you do that is because this measure is so different.
30-second rebuttal.
Thank you.
But we've had a lot of great questions. I didn't get them all in, but we do have to move on, and it's time for closing statements. And we're going to reverse the order. So Mike, you'll go first on the closing statement, and you have 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. And thank you again, League of Women Voters and Councilmember Breeze, for having me here tonight. Again, you know, the ballot question doesn't correctly state what's at stake here. What really is at stake is the impacts on the Navy base in Port Hueneme and 10,000 jobs. We have a significant tax base, and people at the port and the contractors at the Navy base do and want to continue to contribute to this community. They live here, they're operating here, and they would like nothing more to continue to do that. But the truth is, we need a healthy economy in the city in order to grow revenues here. You have a existing gross receipts tax. The way to grow tax revenues in the city is to help people grow their gross receipts. You know, that results right now in $38 million in local purchases and $28 million in taxes. And those are taxes that go to pay for schools and firefighters and the city. And we need to keep this money to support everything that the city does. You know, it's too bad that the city and the port and tenants and the Navy don't see eye to eye. But the fact is that it isn't just them. It's the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the taxpayers, the Tri-County Labor Council. Everybody who's looked at this from outside of this chambers has said, this is a risk we can't take. This costs us too much money. It costs us jobs. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's what really matters. I don't think anyone up here on the city council means to mislead the community. But I do think that what would happen if you pass Measure M, although unintentional, would be devastating.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up with Doug.
Yes. Measure M is the right thing to do. And I ask the citizens of Port Hueneme to vote yes on Measure M. Big, multi-million-dollar international corporations coming into our city to fight against having to buy a business license. As I said, I don't get it. It's just beyond me. I do know this, though, that there's been a lot of wild numbers flown around. My friend here did it this evening, said it went from whatever it was to $10 per thousand or something, whatever he said. The rates aren't even set yet. The ordinance just lists what the maximums are. The city's gonna hold hearings. There's also an appeal process. If a business feels that they're not paying appropriate tax, the city has an appeal process. As a matter of fact, I just spoke with the city attorney last week. I'm having it put on the agenda to strengthen the appeal process so that these businesses have a fair say on what their tax rates are. But you've got the Oxnard Harbor District publishing these maximum tax rates that are in the ordinance that we're required to put in there because of Prop 218, and calculating that the taxes are going to be so high that we're going to run businesses out of the city. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know how else to explain it. This thing has spiraled so far out of control due to the misinformation that's being spread and the scare tactics and whatnot. The city of Port Hueneme is not going to run any businesses out. We're not going to lose any jobs. I ask the citizens to vote yes on him.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of announcements, but first, how about a round of applause? I'll take a moment to explain the selection process. So the league reached out to the no on M side and the yes on M side and said, you just tell us who you want to represent you. So it's not the kind of thing most people want to do, to come up here and have to do this kind of debate. And so I think we really are pleased to have both of them appear tonight. You can't put on a forum like this, though, without volunteers, and I do want to thank the league volunteers. We have Pam and Bob up here. In the back, we have Carmen and Susan. Francis and Mary were our timers. How about a round of applause? We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back with the City Council Candidates Forum. So please don't go too far away. Thank you all.